Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Questions with me. Let's get the camera right. Anyway, let's start again. Can we rewind? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Questions with me, your host Mohammed Shafiq, live from the studios of British Muslim TV here in Wakefield. We hope you're well wherever you're joining us around the world. A very warm welcome. First of all, Happy New Year to you and your loved ones as well. Once again, we hope that the year is fulfilled, inshallah, is filled with blessings, and that the people, the Muslim Ummah, is suffering and in turmoil around the world. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses all the Muslims around the world, and those in difficulties like in Palestine, in Syria, in Yemen, in places which are places where there is killing and suffering and human rights abuses that they are giving. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects them and gives them peace as well, because these past 2 years have been very, very difficult for the Muslim Ummah, and through dua and through working together we can make a difference. Tonight we're focusing on some of the new members of parliament who've been elected for the first time. As you remember, in July last year we had the general election in the United Kingdom, in which the Labour Party had a huge landslide victory, but alongside that victory there was a great result for the Liberal Democrats, got 72 seats. The Conservatives went down to 121 seats, and Reform were able to get their first 4 MPs elected for the first time, including their leader Nigel Farage, who's been in the news a lot these past few days. And then we also have 5 independent MPs who've been elected for the very first time on a platform of pro-Palestine. So their strategy was to stand on a platform to make a stance to get British Muslims active, be better citizens, conduct their civic duty by using the democratic process. So we have one of those MPs joining us tonight. His name is Adnan Hussain. He's the MP, newly elected MP for Blackburn in Lancashire. He'll be joining us very, very shortly alongside myself, and we'll take you all the way through, inshallah, to 10 o'clock here in the UK. Wherever you are, you can join us in this discussion. Any questions you have for Adnan Hussain, MP, you can call us on 01924231083. That's really, really important. The WhatsApp number is on the screen as well. Join us on that discussion. Whilst we're waiting for that, let's just reflect about what is happening in the news today. The big news from across the pond in Canada is that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has announced his resignation as Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party. He was facing lots of opposition from within his own parliamentary party, MPs queuing up to say that he should step down. Well, he's made that decision, an announcement in the last few hours. He says he's resigning because when you're in government you want to make a difference, and he feels, the exact words were, internal battles are the reason why he has decided that he doesn't want to put his party through that, and he has announced his resignation. It will be 9 years, it is 9 years since he was elected Prime Minister in 2013, and he says he will stay in office until his successor is announced. Parliament has been prorogued, which means Parliament is not sitting, so therefore the opposition parties who were going to try to pass a vote of no confidence in him are unable to do that until March, the end of March, the 24th of March. It now allows the Liberal Party in Canada to begin the process of a leadership election and a new Prime Minister. How long will it take for that new Prime Minister to stay in office? Because the opposition Conservatives and the National Democratic Party have both said they will vote down the government. So the anticipation is come March the 24th, the new Prime Minister, once elected, will probably lose a vote of confidence, and then Canada goes into a new election. So let's go back to the UK. You remember July, the general election, it seems like a lifetime ago. It's just hit 6 months. And one of those highlights of the night, you remember here, we covered it here on British Muslim TV, was the election of an independent candidate called Adnan Hussain, You will know the name because he's been a guest on my program a number of times over the years. He stood on a platform of a lifelong commitment. People criticized him at the time, but actually he has a lifelong commitment. I declared an interest. He's a personal friend of mine. He's somebody I've known, shared platforms with. He's a beautiful brother, and it's really, really important that he is there in Parliament. And if you want British Muslims to be integral citizens in this country, then you can't deprive them and deprive us of our right to engage in the democratic process, to stand in an election, to make your argument to the voters, and the voters deciding that they want to vote for you. He won despite there being an independent candidate. Craig Murray, the former ambassador, British ambassador to Uzbekistan, stood as well. He took nearly 7,000 votes as well, and so alhamdulillah, he won, and he's my special guest tonight. Let's go to the House of Commons in London and welcome Adnan Hussain, the MP for Blackburn, who's been elected. Adnan Hussain, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Shafiq.
Good to have you. First of all, I've said this many times to you privately, but congratulations on your victory. How has, let's just start at the beginning, because, you know, for those, I know you, I'm a big champion of you, a big friend of yours, but why did you choose to stand in that general election last year?
Well, to be fair, Shafiq, it was I read the pulse of my community, and I shared the frustrations of my community at a time where we felt that there was a lack of political representation, at a time that we saw a live stream genocide take place in Gaza, and at a time that we all felt traumatized from what we were seeing, instead of steps being taken to appreciate that deep trauma. What was done was Muslims across the UK were scapegoated, gaslighted, and mainstream politicians and the media alike, they painted the Muslim community as the villains. The demonstrations that took place in London, they were deemed and labelled as hate marches, and by some powerful and influential figures. All of this, Shafiq, it infuriated and frustrated me right from the outset. And I knew that many people from my local community shared that same frustration. So I took the decision to stand and to represent and provide a voice that was missing in pretty much the stagnant political landscape that I stood in. And knowing that I stood for and represented the sentiments and frustrations of so many people within my community, I had no doubt that I had a good shot at winning this election.
Yeah, you had a good shot. I remember coming to your campaign headquarters and feeling the momentum. Part of the problem was you had Craig Murray, former ambassador, standing on a pro-Palestine ticket as well, and there was a real fear that you could split the vote, and the incumbent MP at the time, Kate Holland, would have won again. How did you deal with Craig Murray and his politics? Because obviously we've seen in recent days in what happened in Syria, the true face of Craig Murray.
Well, look, Craig Murray came in and it was an extremely unfortunate situation. Had Craig Murray not have stood at that time, then I have no doubt that I would have won with a much larger majority. I won with a majority of 132. Had he not have been in the equation, then the issue of vote splitting wouldn't have arisen, and I would have perhaps won with a majority of 8,000 to 9,000. But Shafiq, this is a democracy. Everyone has a right to stand and come forward as a candidate, and that's what he did. So I don't really have an issue with Craig in doing so, but the issue really arose when there was significant calls from mainly outside of Blackburn, calling for me to step aside and let Craig be the one to
Canada. I think we just might have lost the line to Adnan Hussain there. Okay, so we're listening there to Adnan Hussain, the MP for Blackburn. Just
I'm on it.
are you back? Sorry, we lost you for a second, Adnan.
Sorry, what was the last bit?
You were talking about outsiders trying to force you to step aside, making the decision.
Yeah. I mean, there was calls from outside of Blackburn to ask me to step down, but ultimately I felt that Craig was not the man. He was not going to do a good job of representing the people, and he didn't know the people of Blackburn, and frankly, he didn't care for them as well. So I carried on. My team, despite it becoming quite heated, me and my team carried on, and the results speak for themselves. I'm now the MP for Blackburn.
Yeah.
Despite Shafiq, the Labour Party having had a stronghold in a town where the vote was heavily split, so I'd say it's quite a win.
Yeah, and you were starting from zero, no campaign experience. You're an activist. You shared many platforms over the years, but you started at zero. One of the things that I noticed when I was there in your constituency during the campaign, covering it here for British Muslim TV, one thing I really noticed was that you'd brought Indians and Pakistanis together, you'd brought Jubandis and Brelvis together. I don't ever recall, and I've been involved, as you know, through my previous work on my channel, involved in Blackburn, ever seen that sense of community and breaking down barriers. How important was that to your victory?
The unity of a people is essential in achieving any goal that it's looking to achieve. For me, my community and its people, and that includes every single person, means a lot. I'm not a career politician. I'm not here to further myself as a politician. My background is as a lawyer. I'm a barrister. A few months before the election, I had no idea that I'd be standing and I'd even have the possibility of becoming the MP of Blackburn. So for me to stand in Blackburn, a great amount of, it was a great deal for me. It was a burden in the sense that I felt a responsibility, and I felt that I had to involve everyone. To me, it didn't matter if they were Indians or Pakistani, Bengali, white or otherwise. And in terms of the Muslim community, I just reached out to everybody and said, look, if there's somebody better to represent the sentiments of our community when it comes to Gaza, then let's put that person forward. If not, then I'm ready to give it a shot. And I felt that people believed in what I was saying, and they united and rallied behind me.
Yeah, it was a grassroots campaign, which I often found people were telling me. Now, the commentary in the media is that you are pro-Gaza MP, but you didn't just stand on a pro-Gaza platform. What other policy issues did you stand on during the campaign?
So Gaza is a factor that made the town turn around from a party that the people were so loyal towards, a party that they had voted in for decades and decades. And it made, Gaza was a factor that made the people come what may and vote for an independent candidate. The fact is, Shafiq, the Labour Party really truly underestimated the deep sentiment and hurt the Muslim community had and felt with the lack of representation on that front when it came to Gaza. And of course, Keir Starmer's comments in respect of cutting off the food, water and electricity from besieged people. And now today we see that there's an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu, and one of the reasons for the warrant is for the starvation of a people. The current Prime Minister's words then have now been proven to have been incorrect and deeply offensive.
But he did push back against that and clarified he didn't mean what was portrayed at the time, and he has backstrapped. I mean, the government has reintroduced money for UNRWA, the relief organisation, the United Nations as well.
Well, I mean, it needs a bit more than that. Well, in fact, it needs a lot more than that. There needs to be a commitment from the now Prime Minister, if he's truly serious about the fact that he made a mistake and that isn't what he meant. And in fact, if he's truly serious about upholding the rule of law, then there needs to be a full arms embargo. And that's what we've been asking for in Parliament. There needs to be an end to diplomatic ties with a nation which has a Prime Minister who in fact, has an arrest warrant in his name. And there's, a genocide is the mother of all crimes. You have the United Nations that have called out and said and rang the alarm bells of genocide. You have the ICJ and many other institutions and organizations such as Amnesty International. So there's no real reason or explanation for the Prime Minister's behavior, or indeed the lack of action that he's taken in this regard.
So you get elected. I just wanted to just kind of ask you, because I remember texting you and speaking to you on the night when you had that recount. What was your feeling when you realised that you'd won?
To be honest, Shafiq, it had been a few nights of a lack of sleep, and I was just glad it was over. It was quite a fierce election campaign, and when the announcement was made, I was just too tired, truly, to at that time stand back and feel anything. I did feel a huge sense of responsibility. I had promised so many things during my campaign. I had promised to best represent the people of Blackburn, and that brings a huge amount of, I'll call it a burden. It brings a burden along. You want to deliver on the promises that you've made. Again, this is the difference between someone who's not a career politician and someone who's come forward to actually represent the sentiments of his community.
Yeah, you kind of get to the House of Commons, you know, that very first day. What is that like, this sort of induction, that sort of arriving in Westminster and then being welcomed by the staff?
Well, I mean, there's no real words to explain it. I haven't really been preparing for this moment. There's no real induction as well. You're given the keys and you're told to get on with the job. But as a barrister, someone who's trained with policy and procedure, with tradition in the court, so on and so forth, being in the Commons and being in the House just feels like a large courtroom. So for me, it wasn't a daunting experience. In fact, it's the honour of a lifetime, to be fair, to be involved in politics and be a part of the place where decisions are made. So an honour and a privilege is how I describe it. And as I was driving into Parliament on the first day, that's when it really truly set in. There was a sense of excitement, but largely the responsibility and the burden, it overcame, and I felt that, look, there's work to be done here.
Yeah, and that work is really important. You've not just sat back and tried to, you stayed in there. You've raised your questions. You've interjected in debates. You've questioned ministers. How important is visibility for you when you're representing your constituents in Parliament?
Look, for me, the balance between doing the job here in London, in Parliament, in the Palace of Westminster, and balancing that with the needs of the constituency is quite important. But that said, I'm spending a great amount of time in Blackburn. I've spent a huge amount in Parliament as well. I've rolled up my sleeves and I've got stuck in. My spoken record as a new MP, someone who doesn't have a party structure behind him, I've already spoken of just short of 20 occasions. I've written to various government ministers and departments for constituent issues, participated in, I think it's about 30 early day motions. I've voted around 35 times. I've got my constituency office set up. So coming back to your question, I'd say that I've really got stuck in, and in comparison with some of the other new MPs, I'm well ahead. Yeah,
you're well ahead. And what's your relationship like with the Labour MPs, Liberal Democrats? You sit quite close to the Reform MPs. Do you have some sort of relationship, conversations with them?
Look, my view and attitude is to have the conversation with anybody. When it comes to lobbying, I would lobby anybody when it comes to things that matter to me and my constituents, whether that be Gaza or whether that be something local in Blackburn. I'll go and speak to anyone. I'll have a conversation. I'll have a chat with them. So politics behind the scenes is somewhat different to what we see on our screens, from what we see happening in the House. I'm always happy to speak to anyone and try to convince them, or just have a friendly chat with them.
You made people believe, Adnan, in Blackburn that it was possible to win? You think about 2003 and Jack Straw, Foreign Secretary, standing after the aftermath of the Iraq War. He wasn't able to be dislodged. He won on a reduced majority, but still won. So there was this conception around people saying, you know, you can put any candidate with a Labour rosette is going to win. You made people believe that something else was possible.
Yeah, like I said, it was the sentiments of the genocide in Gaza that were extremely strong in the people of Blackburn and in fact throughout the UK. There was another factor which was, you know, this was people were watching a genocide being live streamed on their mobile phones. We're practically witnessing the most horrific of crimes against humanity played out in real time. And every single person who's watching is in utter horror and disgust. There was just no way that people would carry on with business as usual. So this has got to be a massive factor. And again, the generation that were at play or there at the time of the Iraq War isn't necessarily politically identical to the current generation. Things have changed both locally and nationally, as this election has demonstrated. People are fed up with not being represented and with politicians in the mainstream parties, you know, downplaying what they feel and refusing to describe and accept what's happening on ground in Gaza as a genocide. But that's the beauty of democracy, right, Shafiq? I mean, you can make your disagreement felt through your vote, and that's what I feel that's happened on this occasion. We've witnessed it before. We've witnessed this during the Brexit vote, and again now during the Gaza vote. By having 5 independent MPs in Parliament, this has made history. In fact, I've been invited to a committee only this month for Parliament to discuss and understand what life is like as an independent MP. Parliament is understanding that politics is changing. If you don't listen and hear what the people have got to say, then they'll go towards the way that, well, the independent way.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, you know, in our community, we have a very short attention span and lots of people would have supported you, expecting delivery, don't realise that these things take a lot of time to get the inward investment, to tackle the issue of crime, you know, investment for the NHS, policy ideas which you've been championing. How do you manage expectation?
Look, there's been some slight frustration within the community. My constituency office has taken some time in having it open to the public. But if I look, you know, around East Lancashire, many Labour MPs, or I think there was 2 Labour MPs that at the end of December still hadn't opened their constituency office. This is all understandable given the magnitude of the task you've got to employ, you've got to find a premises, and also I'm operating as an independent outside of party structures. I'm alone, and putting this together as fast as possible has been my number one aim. Aside from that, I don't think people's patience has been tested. I'm out there delivering on my pledges and best representing the people of Blackburn. So, in all honesty, I'm doing as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, we're in 2025. Sadly, the war in Gaza is still going on. Thousands, nearly 46,000 people have been killed. There's 1,200 on the Israeli side who were also killed on October the 7th. What do you make of the inability of the international community to protect the people of Gaza, the children of Gaza who've been killed?
Well, it's a shame. It's a stain on our collective humanity that it's still going on a year on. An absolute failure on part of the international community on internal institutions and international law. It's an absolute failure, a disgrace. And there's nothing more to say.
Yeah, and how I mean, primarily, obviously, you're only 5 independent MPs, but if you were in power, what would you do differently to previous governments when it comes to the issue of Gaza?
So what do you mean if we were in power? if we were in the government.
If you were in government and you were the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary as independent MPs, how would your relationship be different? And how would you be able to stop what's happening in Gaza?
Well, to be fair, I feel that the 5 MPs and the Independent Alliance has already been at the forefront of moving these discussions and putting a huge amount of pressure on the government. I don't feel that we've been restricted in raising this issue and bringing it to the government's attention. In fact, there are many MPs within the government who are equally as frustrated as us and other MPs that the present government is not moving. But the pressure is on, and you can feel it, you can see it. That the front bench in government is feeling a huge amount of pressure. Even if we were, the front bench or indeed every other MP within government has a whip. They're having to do exactly what the government wants them to do. So I feel, being an independent, being on the opposite benches and keeping the pressure going is helping the cause.
Yeah, that's really important. And a real sense of you've been advocating for the British government to restore funding for United Nations Relief Work Agency that's working in the occupied territories. How important is it that the British government stands with the Palestinian people?
I mean, the UNRWA aid it's a lifeline to the Gazans, and to cut off its funding is absolutely well, it's a vital lifeline, and we all know what would happen and what has been happening when UNRWA's funding has been cut. But again, I echo what I've just said already. Giving aid with one hand and providing arms to kill them on the other is not what we need. We need UNRWA to continue, we need the aid to continue, and we need there to be a complete arms embargo. Cutting or revoking 30 licenses is not enough. 100% of all arms licenses to Israel must be stopped. And quite frankly, Shafiq, if we don't, and if this continues, then at some point there will be an inquiry and there will be questions asked, because continuing to provide arms to a state, a nation, to an army which has been accused of a genocide is quite frankly being complicit within the same.
I'll just slightly ask you this question, because this is what lots of people who support Israel would say. The reality is that Israel was attacked on October the 7th. Over 1,200 of its citizens were killed on that day, and any government first responsibility, solemn responsibility, is to protect its citizens. What would you say in response to that?
There is never, ever justification for genocide. There can never be any justification for it. The terror attacks on the civilians of Israel on October the 7th were absolutely wrong, and I condemn that. But to respond with the intent to annihilate a whole civilian population is absolute criminal and barbaric. There is no justification, there is no explanation, no defense for carrying out a genocide. And don't forget, on the one side, you've got the state of Israel, and on the other, you've got the people of Palestine. I mean, the UK government hasn't even recognized the people of Palestine as a state. So, quite frankly, there's a lot wrong here.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Syria as well. We've seen the Assad regime, the brutal regime of Assad, which led to over 400,000 Syrian people being killed, tortured, human rights abuses. Your former opponent, Craig Murray, was quite vocal in supporting the Assad regime. You called him out on social media. Why did you do that, and what do you make of the overthrow of the Assad regime?
Look, I don't ever recall specifically calling him out on his position, but I've always had an issue with the hypocrisy that surrounds those who passionately claim to represent the Palestinian cause, yet they become deaf, dumb and blind when it comes to the suffering of the Syrians. It's always been the strangest opposition to take, and in my opinion, it brings into question one's sincerity for any cause of the suffering of innocent people. If you believe Netanyahu is an evil man carrying out the worst of crimes, then you have to be sincere and have the same passion against tyrants like Assad. And if you can't bring yourself to do that because of some political or ideological loyalty, then you're demonstrating a huge flaw in your morality. And I'm not shy about pointing that out.
Yeah. Are you hopeful that a new Syria can emerge that's inclusive of minorities but human rights, and a place where Muslims can practice their faith again, because that was suppressed for so many decades?
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously an uncertain, turbulent time for the Syrian people politically, but the Syrian people are strong-willed people. They knew what they weren't ready to tolerate under Assad and even his father. They've suffered for decades and decades of the severest form of tyranny, and it shaped them as a people. And I'm sure, given time and the resources, and of course the opportunity and the freedom, they will shape out the political destiny of their nation, of Syria, in a way best suited to them. And these things, of course, Shafiq, as you know, they don't come about overnight.
Yeah. You're an activist, been an activist for many, many years. Now you're a parliamentarian. How are you using your parliamentarian status and office to further your issues that you've been raising, even in this interview?
Well, look, primarily I'm there for the people of Blackburn. I'm there to ensure that I deal with local issues that are affecting the people of Blackburn. But when it comes to international issues, I'm working extremely hard on raising the issue of Gaza in and outside of the Parliament. I've met the Palestinian ambassador and many other organisations in discovering and understanding what's taking place on ground and how best to push that in Parliament. And of course, where required, lobby other members of Parliament to support an end to the bloodshed, to the genocide taking place in Gaza.
Yeah, you are just one vote and one voice amongst hundreds of Labour. When you look opposite where you sit, the opposition benches, when you look at the government side, there are hundreds of new Labour MPs, but you've not allowed that to marginalise yourself. You've taken to the role, the confidence I see when you're asking questions. How difficult is it when you face up against such a huge number of government MPs?
Well, to be fair, by having the alliance and being 5 strong voices, it has helped. I don't feel marginalized. In fact, I feel powerful in the sense that I have an independent voice. I have a voice which is not constrained by party whip. I don't have to operate with the fear of party structures and so on and so forth. I have an opportunity to build my politics and undergo my political journey. And truly being an independent voice has been, I'd say, I feel freedom. I've been a free soul in Parliament, doing and saying all the things that matter to my constituents. For example, Shafiq, the issues concerning namely Gaza, the 2-child benefit cap, the winter fuel allowance. I've had the freedom to really represent and truly represent the sentiments of my constituents without the fear of backlash from the party whips. When the winter fuel allowance was, when the vote was taking place, I could see the frustration in the opposite benches, in the Labour Party MPs, in their faces. They did not believe in what they were forced to vote for or against at that time, whereas I managed to do the right thing by my constituents and vote for the winter fuel allowance for all pensioners.
Yeah. You alluded to the Independent Alliance. Just tell us what that is and what you're hoping to achieve in this group.
Well, the Independent Alliance consists of myself, Ayub Khan, Jeremy Corbyn, Shaukat Adam, and Iqbal Mohammed. The 5 of us primarily we came about. It's an independent group. It's not a political party. We align on things like Gaza, and we move forward as a strong voice, as a collective, in respect of Gaza, and also other matters that concern all our constituents. So that's what the Independent Alliance is and currently doing.
Do you have a whip?
We don't have a whip.
Oh, you don't have a whip. So do you come together and just decide how you're going to vote on things, or are you kind of free to just vote as your conscience allows you to?
We retain our independence, though we do have discussions in respect of upcoming votes, and we do share ideas between us. But when it comes to the actual voting, each member is an individual and free to do as they please.
How's that relationship going with the other 4 independent MPs? I know you sit in you sit at the top of the far back benches as you can get. How's that relationship between you developing as a group?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm blessed to have really good people around me. I've got the benefit of having Jeremy Corbyn to my left, who has decades and decades of knowledge and experience of being a politician. And not long ago, of course, he was the leader of the opposition, the Labour Party at that time. I think it was 2019. I mean, he's a man that knows corridors that will take me years to find. And then I've got Ayub Khan, who's also a fellow colleague and a criminal barrister. Iqbal Mohammed, again, very well educated, and Shaukat Adam as well. Good people. We get on with each other. We see each other pretty much every day when we're in Parliament, and I'd say I'm quite blessed to have a good team around myself.
And what's really interesting is you are being attacked quite viciously on social media by right-wing groups, opponents. How are you handling that limelight?
Well, look, you've got to, in these things, I've realised you've got to grow a thicker skin, or a thick skin, as they say. I mean, I'm here to speak the truth. I'm here to represent my constituents the best I possibly can. It's an absolute shame that people have become what they've become, and you've got, people calling, there's threatening behaviour. At times it can get quite disgusting and vile, but it is what it is. I mean, this is part of the job, and that's not going to stop me from speaking up and representing my constituents.
Yeah, and it's particularly amplified in social media from the likes of Elon Musk, as we've seen this weekend, around the issue of child sexual exploitation. I know your town was affected by that. What are you making of the sort of conversation that is happening in this country around race?
Around what, sorry?
Around race.
Race?
Yeah, sort of thinking about, so you got the issue of child sexual exploitation, where people are making it about just Pakistanis and forgetting the white perpetrators of child sexual abuse, or looking at crime from an angle of ethnicity.
Well, look, I mean, I've just come out from a ministerial statement. The government is pretty much on the right tracks. The crimes committed in this scandal, I mean, are evil and depraved, and certainly everybody should turn around and condemn these crimes. And those that have been found to have committed these crimes, they should be given the severest of punishments, and due process must take place. There must also be a deterrence from this from happening again, and the victims of these crimes must be given the full support in rebuilding or attempting to rebuild. But the one thing is that these crimes were committed by individuals, and I feel that it's wrong to demonize whole communities for the actions of these individuals. In terms of the likes of Elon Musk, I mean, the wealthiest man on earth is trying to destabilize British politics and poison politics. I'd say anyone from any side of the spectrum who is comfortable with outside forces in destabilizing our politics doesn't have the best interest of the nation to heart.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, obviously you got elected as an independent MP. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I just wanted to get through these summer questions. We've got some questions from some of the viewers, which we'll get to in a second, but just a few more. You're obviously an independent MP for Blackburn. Local elections coming up soon. Are you going to encourage and support independent candidates in the local elections to build a vibrant team of support locally?
Sorry, Shafiq, that was intermittent. Could you repeat that again?
I was just talking about the fact that now you're the MP for Blackburn. Are you going to be putting up candidates in the local elections and building a team of independent councillors as well?
Well, currently, I've been invested in ensuring that I get to do my job properly and efficiently here in Parliament. I mean, it's a hell of a task. I haven't really considered anything else or locally what is to happen or is not to happen. There is also the prospect of the 2026 election being delayed as a result of devolution. So quite frankly, my answer is no. I've not thought that far at all. Though the local independent councillors are Blackburn, it's a close-knit community, and the tram was formed within the local community, and I'm sure if the need arises and the community cares for it, then they'll rally up and get some further independent councillors.
Okay, so Sugra on Twitter is asking, how do you manage the sort of travel, because you're in Parliament Monday to Thursday and then in the constituency? How are you managing that in terms of work-life balance?
It's tough. It's hard. At times I'm finding that I'm travelling up and down to Parliament, sometimes 4 times. I'm coming up to London and travelling back to Blackburn, and then travelling up to London and back the same week. It's tough. It's a tough life if you truly care and commit, and if you're committed towards your constituents. But I'm going to carry on doing whatever's required to best represent the people of Blackburn.
Ali on Twitter as well is asking, what do you make of Imran Khan's incarceration, and have you done anything to call for his release?
Well, I feel that the human rights situation in Pakistan is, of course, one that is of extreme concern for all of us, and what is taking place on ground, and specifically what we saw take place towards the end of November and beginning of December is of great concern. In terms of what have I done or what are we doing currently and presently, I hope that this situation is resolved by the people of Pakistan within Pakistan. I don't truly at this stage believe that it's for anybody else to get involved.
Yeah, and so Bushra was asking about, is Tommy Robinson a hero or a villain?
Is Tommy Robinson a
hero or a villain?
Well, I mean, he is in prison currently. I suppose I'll leave it to
that. Okay, I'm loving these short answers because it'd be great. I mean, how can the public hold you to account?
In the same way that. In the same way.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, I was going to say in the same way that they held Labour to account during this general election. My election is because the people felt that the Labour Party was not representing them, and they held the outgoing MP to account, hence my election. I'd expect people to hold me account in the very same manner. Come election day, if I am not living up to expectations, if I'm not representing the people, then of course they've got the right to vote me out. But that said, I'm very much on the ground in Blackburn. People in Blackburn know how they can access me. I'm quite accessible. All my details are out there, and I'm from amongst the people, from the community. I've not gone anywhere.
Asma says, how do you switch off?
I don't.
but it's going to be a long journey. You got 5 years in Parliament. You're going to have to make the time to switch off and focus on your health, well-being, family, friends.
It's tough. It's tough. As I keep saying, I'm not a career politician. This hasn't been a career for me. For me, the burden and responsibility of ensuring that I represent my constituents and everything else that I stood up for me to deliver on those promises is quite daunting. So it's constantly on your mind, and you're constantly thinking about how you can best represent. And yeah, of course, I've got to learn how to switch off. But right now, as I said, it's a constant, ever evolving thought process as to the job.
No, that's really good. Just so I'm going through, there's been quite a few questions come through. So Nads is saying, what was one of the highlights of the campaign for you?
The unity shown within the community. I've never felt that ever before. We had men, women, we had children getting involved in the campaign, and every other person that I met that was delivering on the campaign, I felt like it wasn't my election, it was their election, and people truly believed in what they were campaigning for. But that said, anybody who's seen what's happening in Gaza, the genocide that's being live streamed, children being shot in the head and the chest, and the manner in which the brutality that we're seeing on ground, I suppose anybody that's seen that would then understand why this unity has come about and why people were so passionate in having me elected.
Final question from Twitter, I promise. Faraz is saying, with the rise of rampant Islamophobia across this country, what are you doing to tell the positive story about British Muslims?
Well, I'm a representative of British Muslims, and I feel that once people will see me here in the house or outside on the streets, as a Muslim, I feel like we've not really ever truly had proper representation, if I may say. I feel that we've not been able to put forward people or representatives that have been able to give a positive light of Islam and give the definition or the meaning or the true meaning of what Islam is. And the fact is, Islam is a religion which has no culture. It comes into a society and it's there to enhance that society that it is in. And hopefully with my election and being here in Parliament, I'll be giving a positive light of Muslims and Islam in this country.
What are the top 3 priorities that you're focused on for Blackburn?
Well, currently I'm focused on locally the state of the NHS. We have our hospital a few weeks ago was put into red alert. I'm currently working with various stakeholders on ground in finding out why the hospital's in the state that it is in, and I'm looking to discuss the same with the government. Local business is quite important for me. I feel that if local businesses thrive and flourish, then the local economy will also thrive and flourish. And that's something that I'm pushing as much as I possibly can. I'm actually looking to invite as many business into Blackburn. And one of my strap lines is, you come into Blackburn, you employ people here, and you do good by them, and you've got the MP on your side. And thirdly, again, I mean, on a national level, the winter fuel allowance, the 2-child benefit cap, Blackburn is amongst the 10 most deprived towns in the UK. Over 10,000 pensioners have been affected by the 2-child benefit cap, and thousands of children have also been, over 10,000 have been affected by the winter fuel allowance, and thousands of children have been affected by the 2-child benefit capping in Blackburn. And again, Blackburn is amongst the 10 most deprived towns in the country. So for me, all these things that I've mentioned are a priority, and this is what I'm working towards.
Final 2 questions. One is around the rules of the House of Commons. They are very, very strict process. Have you got an office yet? You understand the rules? Is it getting easier now that you've been there for 6 months?
Well, I usually say to people that I've got the manual and the Bible, Parliamentary Bible. I've bought this so that I know exactly what we're doing and we're following the rules. But then again, as a lawyer, the training that we have, we're used to reading rules, we're used to interpreting law and so on and so forth. I don't feel like this is something huge that I can't get my head around. I'm doing okay, I'd say. picking up policy and procedure as fast as I possibly can.
Final question, sir. Is this a one-off? Are you going to serve one term like Martin Bell did in Tatton in 1997, stood as an independent and said, I'm only going to serve one term? Or is this the beginning of a journey to be the champion for your constituency in Blackburn?
Shafiq, it's very early days, and for now I'm trying to ensure that I do perform on the pledges that I stood for, that I achieve everything I set out to achieve. I truly am trying to become the voice for a community that I felt or has been overlooked and somewhat neglected. I think if I'm able to achieve all of this, if I'm able to deliver on my promises, then I may consider standing again.
Wow. So it's watch this space, as they say. Adnan, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking some time. I know Parliament's in session this week after the Christmas recess, but thank you so much for your time, and congratulations and best wishes for the year ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Adnan Hussain, MP, joining us there live from the House of Commons. He is one of the 5 independent MPs. He referred to them. Jeremy Corbyn, former leader of the Labour Party, who was expelled from the party when he stood down as leader, and then he was expelled, stood as an independent in his constituency. You had Shaukat Adam in Leicester South. You've got Ayub Khan in Birmingham Perrybar. You had Iqbal Mohammed. I know Iqbal Mohammed because we hosted, if you remember, the hostings for the independent candidates here on British Muslim TV. I was the host for that. Iqbal Mohammed shined on that day, and he's an MP with a majority of over 7,000 in Dewsbury and Batley. And yeah, so that, and then you've obviously got Adnan Hussain there. It is tough. I've worked in House of Commons, and I spend a lot of time amongst politicians. It is a difficult job. You have this spotlight on you, and you've seen it this weekend from Elon Musk and his comments he's been making about Nigel Farage, the grooming gangs. And as Adnan said, I'm someone who campaigned on these when it wasn't fashionable on the far right, when it was about the victims. And if you think about Islam and you think about our faith, these crimes are abhorrent crimes, and they should be, the people should be brought to justice for the people who carried out these crimes, and punishment given, and support available for the victims. But that means also that the institutional failings are rectified and never happen again. And we should do whatever we can to protect our children. There's no difference between a Muslim girl being raped as part of a grooming gang or a white girl being raped. They're children. And what the rhetoric this weekend has done, sadly, is created an environment where racism and xenophobia is amplified because of the actions of a very small number of people. And my hope is that when we engage in this discussion, or other discussions around Islamophobia that we see on the rise, not just in this country, but across the world, that we recognize that we've all got a responsibility to be ambassadors for Islam. And yes, there'll be some like Adnan Hussain and others who have the huge privilege, and there are many MPs on the Labour benches and the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives who are able to articulate that in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords, in council chambers, and that's a big responsibility. But there's a responsibility on all of us. My job is here on TV, but actually, more importantly, we've all got a job to be better Muslims. How do you become better Muslims? By connecting to the deen. That's the first thing, connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you're not going to be a perfect Muslim on the first day. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. I'm probably more sinful than any of you watching this. But the one thing that we have is that connection to the deen. Alhamdulillah, that parents, that we were born in a Muslim household, we understand the importance of faith to our lives, that it shapes our every part of our existence, whether that's in our personal space, in our relationship with our families, in our relationship, how we bring our children up, how we interact with our neighbours and our wider community. So I just want to say thank you so much to Adnan Hussain for joining us, the MP for Blackburn, independent MP, as being my special guest. We will, over the weeks and months to come, focus on some of the new faces and those of the old one. I'll be back next Monday again at 9 o'clock here on British Muslim TV. From myself, Mohammed Shafiq, and the whole team here at British Muslim TV, Take care of yourself and each other. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Perfect.